On today's menu at the Glow Diner, she had powers I no longer possess.
I just don't have time for that. We deserve to enjoy our week. We shouldn't be waiting for the weekends to do fun things or to enjoy our lives. That's only 30% of our time.
Hello, Glow regulars, and if you're new here, welcome to the Glow Diner. My name is Virginia, and I'll be your host, waitress, and cook for this episode. And today's special is the recipe to doing it all. So we're talking about time management and work-life balance. This is once again a combo episode, which means that all of the information, tips, and advice is backed up by science. So if you're curious and want a better taste of the studies and articles I'll be referring to today, all of the links are in the show notes. Now, if you knew me in college, you're very excited about me finally doing this episode because I was a witch. So in addition to being in school full-time and writing my thesis in my last year, I was also working multiple jobs. So I had one full-time student council job, I was a teacher assistant, a grader for another class, a note taker, a fitness instructor, and an ambassador for a gym. So I was very active on social media. In addition to all of this, I also managed to take really good care of myself. I was going to the gym 5 to 6 times a week. I was eating really well. And I had my beauty routine down. Girlie was doing her nails, lashes, shaving and lasering, and self-tanning weekly. She had powers I no longer possess. Because what do you mean I actually even had a social life? Like going out, seeing my friends? Crazy. And the reason I'm sharing this right now is not to brag, but it's just to show that I really was doing the most of everything at that time. I was using every possible strategy you can think of to make everything work. Now, it wasn't healthy, but today I now have my very first 9 to 5, and it's been about a month and a half. I feel like I have time for absolutely nothing outside of work. Like I go to work, spend my day there, come home, and I'm like so exhausted. It's already dark outside and I'm like, okay, bye, good night. And then the weekend comes around, and instead of doing like fun things and seeing friends and all of that, I end up just having to catch up on the week's laundry, cleaning, and then I'm just so exhausted that I want to stay in bed and sleep until I have to go back to work on Monday. So I feel like there's a good middle here somewhere where I should be able to feel like I have control over how I spend my time and still being able to do things that are important to me, but not burn myself out while doing it, you know? So my dear Glow regulars, this is what we'll try to figure out today. So first, I really wanted to understand why a 9 to 5 felt so much different from school. And I feel like a lot of people relate to that because I'm always seeing posts about it, people saying that there's so much more, that the 9 to 5 life is not built for them. And I mean, it's really not, but that's a whole other conversation I'm not going to go into because right now we are just trying to figure out how we can make this work for us. The first reason I found of why it feels so much more different now is because of the loss of time autonomy. And there's research that shows that people feel better when they actually have control of how their time is structured. So even if I'm technically having less hours in a day where I'm busy than I did when I was in college, back then I got to actually pick out when I was doing what. So I could jam pack all of my classes in 2 days and then decide that the rest of the week was just going to be me catching up on like schoolwork or even like house chores, gym, and other things that were important to me. Whereas today, there is like a whole chunk of my day that I couldn't move that needs to be me sitting at my desk at work. And having low control over how you're spending your day, and then having a lot of demands of things that you need to do at work or even just outside of work leads to higher stress and fatigue. The next thing is that the way that we're mentally tired right now is really not comparable to the way that it was in college. Just because in college, you'd go from having class to the gym, to seeing friends, to studying something different. So you constantly have this change in your life. Whereas now, if you're working a full-time job, you have 8 hours of the exact same type of
thinking and decision making all day long. And this comes from the theory of ego depletion by Baumeister, showing that mental effort throughout the day reduces your self-control and motivation later on. So if you're spending the whole day making decisions, thinking about the same thing for 8 hours straight, and then you come home and you're asking yourself to do all of these other different things, it's no wonder you feel absolutely exhausted. And it's crazy because mental fatigue even impairs physical performance. So of course, if you're spending the whole day having your brain do all of these things for work, and then you come home and there's absolutely no way for you to have the energy to go to the gym, well, it's scientifically proven, so it's not just you. So it's not even about motivation or discipline anymore. We are just mentally cooked. The third reason is a little sneaky, and think about it. Whenever we talk to people working a full-time job, or even yourself, you might be thinking this to yourself, you're wanting to do all these things like going to the gym, starting up new hobbies, cooking a nice meal, and every time the same thing that comes into our mind is, I just don't have time for that. And this ties directly into the time poverty concept that comes from a 2013 study. And it's basically the whole idea that feeling like you don't have time reduces decision-making quality. So if you come home at night and you have all these things that you'd want to be doing and you start having a full list, and then right away you're like, I don't have time to do this correctly, so I just don't have time to do it at all. And it kind of adds up for all of these things. Next thing you know, you're just kind of like rushing through it and you're like, since I don't have time to do any of this, what even is the point? And then your decision making is super decreased because, again, you're just trying to rush through it. It feels really impossible or unrealistic. So then you, again, fall back to what even is the point? So then we just end up doing nothing of the things that we want to do, but still feeling like we're always busy. The last one comes from the role accumulation theory. And that's something that I really can relate to from when I was in college. I felt like I had multiple roles. I was a student, I was a gym goer, I was somebody who literally could go out drinking and then the next day still be up early studying in the library. And working a 9 to 5 now, I don't really get as much of that variety. It's always I'm either home or I'm either at work. So it becomes really easy to just be the person that works and then recovers from work. And that's just a mentally very unsatisfying identity to have. So basically, what I'm understanding from most of these reasons is that a lot of that different feelings comes from the fact that we feel like we have no time, when really it comes down to energy and just mental fatigue. And like, because our full-time work takes up more of our time, it needs to be like the main thing that defines us and is part of our identity. Okay, so now I want us to go through some of the mistakes that I know I'm making and that you're probably making too, as to why we feel that way. So first of all, why are we treating weekdays like survival mode? Why is Monday to Friday just waking up, work, scrolling, sleep, and then repeat? And then we're all like, okay, but I'll just do the fun things on weekend. Next thing you know, the weekend comes around, you have so many things that you need to do, and once again, you come up so overwhelmed you don't end up doing any of them. Also, why are we only allowing ourselves to enjoy 30% of our lives? And there is research that shows that people are happier on weekend, but they found that it's not just because those are some magical days. It's actually because weekends is when we feel like we have control over our own time. So later on in this episode, I'm going to go through some ways that we can feel like we have control over the weekdays as well. The second mistake that we're making is relying on motivation after work. And like we saw earlier, when you're spending the whole day thinking about the same thing, making the same decision, it leads to mental fatigue. So then it's so much harder to make the right decisions at the end of the day when you come home. A study on implementation intentions proves that pre-planned actions are a lot more effective than just relying on motivation and willpower. But with that being said, our third mistake is now to overload our evenings. Planning fallacy is the idea that people consistently underestimate how long a task actually takes. So if you're like me and you're absolutely obsessed with watching the
what I do after my 9 to 5 or like my 5 to 9 after my 9 to 5 routine kind of videos. And you're like, dude, how did these people actually manage to do all of this? Like, there's just no pause button on their day. They're just going and going and going and going. Then yeah, it makes you feel like you should be able to do everything after 5. But girly, we can't. Because once again, mistake number 4, time is not the primary driver for performance. It's actually energy. So even if whenever you watch those videos, it feels like people have the time to do all of these things because they're literally filming themselves doing it, at the end of the day, you need energy to be able to get yourself through those things, whether or not you have the time to do them. And that's why it's such a big mistake for us to constantly feel like we don't have time, when in reality, it comes down to the amount of energy that you have at the end of your day. And the last mistake I want to talk about, and I thought this was really interesting, is to not have any transition ritual after work. So not having anything that tells your brain, okay, we were at work, now I'm doing this, which means we are now home and focusing on different things than just work. There's a 2007 study that shows that psychological detachment from work is absolutely essential for recovery. One of the things I'm really struggling with today is that I genuinely cannot turn my brain off from thinking about work. And it's come to a point where if I know I have something stressful coming up at work within the next week or so, I will literally struggle so much with sleeping because all I can think about is freaking work. And then when I manage to fall asleep for barely a few hours, I am dreaming about work. What the heck? So clearly, none of this right now is sustainable. None of this right now feels satisfying because none of it is. So my dear Glow regulars, I think it's time for us to find some solutions. I think it's time for us to come up with a plan that's going to make us feel like our full-time job is not running our lives anymore, and we actually get a say in the things that we want to do. And not only we're able to take good care of ourselves, prioritize the thing that we know we need to prioritize to be our best selves, but also just enjoy life. So the first thing we're going to do is bring back some structure into our lives. I feel like one of the reasons I was able to get everything done in college was because I had strict times for exams. I had deadlines for schoolwork and stuff like that. Whereas now it doesn't so much feel like it. Obviously, like I have deadlines at work, but I don't want to talk about work right now. Like that's what we're doing in that 9 to 5. That's what we're doing full time at work. That's when we deal with those deadlines. But now I want to focus on the things that we're doing outside of work. And we're really going to try to remove that like decision-making aspect of it, or that motivation-driven aspect of it. And we're going to try to give ourselves some structure. So something that I'm going to be doing, for example, is really just give my weekdays a theme. So for example, I know that on Thursdays, I have a spin class with one of my friends. So Thursday can be more of a social day. Whereas Wednesday, I want to focus more on rest when I come from work, because I know I'm halfway throughout the week. I'm kind of building up a bit of that mental fatigue from Monday and Tuesday, and I want to feel refreshed to make it through Thursday, Friday. So it's just kind of deciding a theme of what you're going to be doing every evening after work and actually sticking to it. And I know it kind of sounds like an annoying thing to do, especially when you get started and you have to kind of follow that structure. But this is a reminder from the first episode that habits reduce decision fatigue and increase consistency. So as you get used to doing those things, as you get used to following that structure, you're going to feel a lot less of that mental fatigue. So if it's set in your routine that Tuesday night is the night that you go and do groceries, then you don't have to come home from work, realize your fridge is empty, try to decide if you'd rather order takeout because you just don't feel like going to the groceries. Whereas if it's a rule in your book that Tuesday is grocery day, you know is coming up. You can have a plan on Monday. You can start writing out your grocery list so that knowing that Tuesday is your grocery day, you're ready to go and do that right away. The next tip is to use time blocking, which is a concept from a 2007 study, instead of just adding things to a never-ending to-do list. Because if you're constantly telling yourself, I need to do this, I need to do that, it turns into, I'll do this later and I'll do that later. Whereas if you're adding a rule to yourself where it's this time, 6 a.m. is the time that I go to the gym every single morning. Or 6 o'clock is when I start cooking for dinner so that I can be all done eating and cleaned up the kitchen by 7 p.m. And it really comes down to making it a rule and a non-negotiable and trying to reduce that amount of decisions you have to make after work after being tired from 8 hours of making decision. And whether or not you actually follow these rules and these non-negotiable comes from discipline, because once again, we're not relying on motivation, but something you can do is tip number 3, to make things easier for your future self. And this is one of my favorite things to do ever. Anyone who's ever spent time with me has heard me say, oh my gosh, past V takes such good care of myself, or future V is going to be so grateful that I did this. And I really do think that's a good motivating way to look at it. And we know from habit formation that anything that we can make easier is going to lead to higher consistency. And this can be as easy as just taking a little bit of extra time from your Sunday to plan out what meals you're going to cook during the week, or meal prepping if that's something you even have the time for. Or something I always do is evening V takes really, really good care of morning V, because morning V is tired. Morning V is tempted to stay in bed and just sleep in until the very last alarm rings and I know I have to run to catch the bus that's going to get me to work on time. But I'll tell you everything that evening V does for morning V, okay? So I always have my water bottle filled and in the fridge. I always have my gym bag fully packed and ready to go with my gym clothes folded on top of it. So then all I have to do in the morning is get up, go over to my gym bag, put on the gym clothes, grab my water bottle from the fridge, and I am right out the door to get my workout done. So it really just comes down to doing as many things as you can in the evening to make your morning easier, because truly nothing is going to make your day better than feeling so productive first thing in the morning. And the joke is that you didn't even have to take that many decisions. You just had to go through the things that your evening self planned out for you. And this is something my mom used to say all the time. And I'm sure she still says it because she's one of those girlies that has her sayings and she sticks to it. She used to always tell me that 10 minutes in the evening is so different from 10 minutes in the morning. So for example, if it takes her just 10 minutes to get her little yogurt ready for the next morning, she'll always try to do it in the evening. Because remember earlier when we were talking about time poverty, when it feels like every task that you're doing is going to take way too long and you won't have time to do any of it, therefore you end up doing nothing. It kind of comes down to the same thing where if you know you have to leave at a certain time for work and it feels like you're just rushing through tasks, you might just skip it, or you're underestimating how much time it takes for you to do that task and you end up running late. Whereas in the evening, even if it doesn't actually take you 10 minutes and it ends up taking you 15, it's really just 5 minutes of you going to bed a little later. Do you know what I mean? Like there's still that extra wiggle room or flexibility to be able to do those things that are going to make your morning so much easier. So all I'm trying to say, if there's anything that you can do in the evening to make your morning easier, or if there's anything you can do the day before or during the weekend to make another day easier, then do it, because your future self is going to be very grateful. My fourth tip for you is to protect your peak energy windows. We know about circadian rhythms and the link to performance from a lot of previous research, but basically we understand that performance varies throughout the day and it's very different from person to person. This comes back from the idea of protecting our energy over just protecting our time. Because personally, I know that even though I have more time in the evening than I do in the morning, I have like triple the amount of energy in the morning than I do in the evening because I've always been a very morning person. If I get my day started early and I rush through doing my workout, getting to work on time, answering all the emails and doing all the important tasks of my day in the morning, that day is a million times more productive for me than if I have a slow morning and then I wait for the energy to kick in the afternoon. Because the truth is, after lunchtime, it's nappy time for me. Like, I am so in awe of people that have a lot of energy in the afternoon and the evenings, because as soon as it gets a little bit dark outside, I'm done. I'm out. I'm sleeping. I'm ready for bed. Like, but that's really just like who I am and how my body reacts to different times of the day. So my best way to take advantage of that is to get a lot of things done in the morning and allow myself to rest at night. And you should really kind of work your schedule around when you know you have a lot of energy as well. So if for you, waking up in the morning is a really hard thing to do, you don't feel like you have the energy for anything, but at the end of the day, you're super wired from your day, you're awake, you have a lot of energy, then now's the right time to go and work out and do those things that a morning person does in the morning. And one's really not better than the other. I think there's so much discourse around like night owls versus morning birds. I think you just really need to fit the category that works for you and not try to change yourself into something else. Like, I know for me, like, I need to only pick one thing that I'm going to do in the evening. Like, for example, I was saying on Thursday, I have that spin class. There's absolutely no way I'm going to do the spin class, then go grocery shopping, and then, I don't know, cook for like the next 3 days. Like, that's not going to happen because realistically, I know that after that spin class, I can barely get myself in the shower to wash my hair because I am so exhausted. So be very strategic with how you plan out your days, knowing when you get the most energy versus when you get the least amount of energy. And that should help a lot. Tip number 5, and I really love this one. And if you're as obsessed as I am with the psychology of well-being and science of happiness, I'm going to plug it again. I don't care. The podcast, The Happiness Lab, is super interesting. And you know what? I think this is like the 3rd episode that I talk about this podcast, but I warned you. I told you that I plug this podcast in whenever I can because I love it so much. But basically, the science of well-being shows that the best thing you can do is add small positive activities significantly to boost happiness. I used to be the girl that like absolutely needed something to look forward to like get myself going. If I knew that I was going on vacation a few months from now, I would be so motivated to do everything leading up to that because I was really excited about it. I felt like I was always looking out to like the next thing to be excited about. And then you fall into this trap of like, oh, I'll be happy when I get to this vacation, or I'll be happy once I accomplish this one thing, once I have this amount of money saved, once I weigh this much. And it's like you get stuck in a loop of like, I'll only be happy when the next thing comes. So what I want us to do now is to make ourselves feel like a person again, make ourselves feel like we're allowed to be happy on the daily, and try to add one little thing every day to cheer us up. And this can really be anything. It can be seeing or calling a friend. It could be just going on a nice walk if it's nice out with some music, having a little self-care evening where you're doing a face mask, or even taking yourself out for coffee. It kind of comes down to making ourselves feel like our life is happening throughout the week too, and not just the weekend, not just planning fun things on weekend, but also having something
to look forward to every day throughout the week. Even if we're busy with work, we still want things that are just good self-care, just taking care of ourselves, keeping ourselves happy and in a good mood. I think that's really the best thing that we can do to make it feel like our life is not just work and resting from work. The last tip I want to give, and I talked a little bit about this earlier, about how it never really felt like I was moving from work to home because I was just still constantly thinking about work and then dreaming about work. Like, girly's struggling. And what we're going to do is create a shutdown ritual, kind of have something to let us know that the workday is over. And there's a study from 2014 that shows that clear endings to work improve recovery and next day performance. So you're not just doing it to feel better, but it's overall also just going to make you perform better. So it really doesn't need to be anything big. It's just something that needs to tell your brain that you're fully off of work right now. Something that I love to do every time I come home from work is I'll take a shower and change from my work clothes. And I think that's a good way for me to just kind of be like, okay, we're done with this. Ouch. And like I said, it really doesn't need to be anything complicated. It especially does not need to be anything productive. It can just be to, sit outside in the sun, no phone, no nothing. It can just be to light a specific candle. And then whenever you smell that scent, you know that you're home and done for the day. You could be having like a mocktail. I have been wanting to do mocktail Mondays so badly for the longest time. Like, I want to find some fun little mocktail recipes and just, sip on my little mocktail when I come home from work and have a great time. You could also just change into like nice fancy matching set pajamas that just tell your brain that you're home and finally relaxing. So it's really just about finding that one thing that lets you completely forget about work and lets you just close that door and wait until you're back at work the next day to reopen it. So I know that's something I'm really going to work on because, like I said, I can't be dreaming about work. This cannot be happening. Like, not every single night. It's okay once in a while, but every single night is crazy, right? Oh, something else that I feel like is kind of helpful, and this is so funny because I was actually talking about this with my boss because we were having a chat, kind of the same thing, like whereas I'm dreaming about work, but he says he was really having trouble falling asleep because he's constantly just like thinking about things that he needs to remember for the next day or the next week, like work related. And I told him, I was like, I do this thing where if I feel like I'm thinking about too many things and I just need it out of my head so I can stop just like repeating, oh, I need to not forget about this. I need to not forget about this. I would just like pull out my phone and start a voice memo and just like say all the things that I didn't want to forget. And then I put my phone away and it's done. And then the next day I can re-listen to the voice memo and see about the things I didn't want to forget. But at least it's not just a loop going on in my head anymore of like, I can't forget about this. I can't forget about this, blah, blah, blah. Because that's awful. That's absolutely awful. So anyway, he said that didn't work for him. But I think it's just because he didn't try it. No, I think it's important to find things that work for you. And it's okay if this is more of like a trial and error and you end up, trying a few things that don't work. If it means you get to find a thing that does work, then keep trying different things, because I really do think that we deserve to enjoy our week. We shouldn't be waiting for the weekends to do fun things or to enjoy our lives. Like I said earlier, that's only 30% of our time. So just to recap really quickly, my plan moving forward is to have a weekly structured, so set days for different things, have certain non-negotiables like specific time to go to the gym or specific time to start cooking my meals. I want to have some flexibility also throughout all of it. Like if I decide that Thursday is if I decide that Thursday is my social day, it doesn't mean that I have to go for coffee or I have to go to the spin class every single week on Thursday. It just means that I should be making an effort to call somebody or see somebody depending on the amount of energy that I have. And finally, having some boundaries with work, deciding that when I'm off work, I'm off work. If there's something urgent, they can call me. But until then, like, my team's notifications are off because we need some boundaries. We need that clock in and clock out. And if I'm being completely honest, this is my first, well, it's not my first, but it's my first like 9 to 5 management position. And it's a lot for my brain to take in. So I know I need to work on those boundaries. But yeah, I think the biggest bite to take from this episode is really that it doesn't always mean that we don't have time to do those things. A lot of time is actually energy. And we just need to be more patient with ourselves, take good care of our future self so she can get all the things accomplished and yeah, try to find some balance in it all. So that is all I have for you today. If you enjoyed the episode, please make sure you rate, review, subscribe, follow, whatever it is that the podcast platform you're listening on right now lets you do. It really means the world to me. I've had a few people reach out in the last few days to talk to me about the podcast. And it has just been like, when I tell you like tears to my eyes, like this is something that I work really hard on and means a lot to me. And I want to keep putting a lot of energy and effort into. So knowing that people are listening and are enjoying it means the world to me. So yeah, I need to start making more social media content so that people can find a podcast more easily. But, you know, if you enjoy it, you can tell your friends about it. You can share it on your socials and tag me in it so I can see it. But yeah, I really hope that today's special hit the spot. And as always, this one's on me.